Many of us wonder, is the CIA meddling in the United States when it's supposed to only be in the other countries? Are we being misled? Is the president of the United States being misled? To help me understand this, I have Kevin Shipp. Kevin, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
So, some background, Kevin is a former CIA counterterrorism expert, counterintelligence investigator, whistleblower, writer, and author. Kevin, something that I've wanted to understand is investigative journalist James O'Keefe was able to record a few CIA contractors, and they admitted to him on tape that they previously withheld intel from President Donald Trump, and that if he gets back into office, that they will do that again. Is it common for the CIA to withhold intel from a sitting president, or was this unique to Donald Trump?
It is common. They've been doing it since their foundation in 1947. They withheld information from Harry Truman, for example, when they smuggled Nazi war criminals into the United States as scientists, I think in connection with MK Ultra and some other things, rocket science and things. And the CIA doctored the files so that Truman didn't see the war crime connections. And those Nazis have been in the CIA or were in the CIA ever since. Some of them have passed away. The other wound up being the director of NASA. So yeah, the CIA, with the exception of the George H.W. Bush administration, who was a CIA officer in the White House, with his exception, you can be sure that they withheld information from Donald Trump, and you can be sure that they will block information from him again.
With George H.W. Bush, he used to be I think the former head of the CIA. Is that correct, or at least he was high up?
No, he was the director of the CIA, and what a lot of people don't know is the claim was made that that was his only interaction with the CIA. Records show that his affiliation as a CIA officer go way back to around the time of the Bay of Pigs. One of the most deceptive, destructive representatives we've had in our government, and he was CIA the entire time. Hence, when he was vice president, he ran Iran-Contra behind Congress's back.
Would he have instructed CIA going forward to withhold information from the CIA, or was that just starting to become something that they did more often?
Well, that is the CIA. They've been doing that since their inception. It's part of their procedure, especially in the Directorate of Operations, which I'm demanding that they reform. But no, this has been going on for decades. And of course, it actually got more intense under Donald Trump. I did a program on the Russia collusion hoax, which was an abomination. Those people that conducted that hoax really should have been arrested at the high levels of government. John Brennan, Comey, and others. That was, my program revealed the laws that they've broken and how they did it. But that shows you how deep the CIA's reach goes into our government and even into our news media and really across America.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Wow. Okay. Speaking of those former people like Brennan, 51 former intelligence people from the CIA, FBI, NSA, they all fabricated and signed this Hunter Biden laptop story that it was Russian disinformation. This ends up manipulating the American people, keeping them in the dark, getting Biden elected. Why hasn't there been anyone held accountable for purposely deceiving the American people?
Well, you have to understand the CIA's control over our entire elected government, and that includes Congress. Their control is so pervasive that basically they run the show. So that was a CIA operation, a disinformation piece to try to attack and destroy Donald Trump, and they got away with it because the CIA essentially, behind the scenes, clearly runs our government, and we prove that in the book that's coming out.
Okay, so when people say the deep state, the CIA is definitely part of that then.
Well, I'll call it the shadow government. The CIA is the shadow government, meaning the government behind ours that controls our elected government system. The deep state, and this is just in my view, is a little different. It's the expansive CIA, Department of State, FBI colossus that all functions together basically to undermine essentially the U.S. American citizens, in other words. So the deep state is the entire machine that has gotten so out of control that it now hides and information from the American public and deceives them. And I consider that separate from the shadow government, although, they're like Siamese twins. They function together. Shadow government focuses specifically on the CIA, as does my book.
Okay. Because I noticed the head of the CIA, Bill Burns, he's being dispatched more than I ever remember a CIA person being dispatched when it comes to war and trying to, maybe negotiate peace. Isn't that what Anthony Blinken and Jake Sullivan should be doing? And yet it seems I see Bill Burns' name more and more in the news.
Nothing new. Going back to the coup in the Ukraine, before that coup occurred, John Brennan was making secret trips to the Ukraine regularly without the American public's knowledge. But excuse me, before the coup actually took place, Brennan was in place setting the whole thing up. So, and the CIA trips are the ones that we know about. There's, of course, many that we do not know about. I used to travel with the deputy. Sorry about that. There's allergies going on here down in somewhere in the southeastern United States. Anyway, there's no question about that. The purpose of this book specifically is to focus on the CIA's violations of the U.S. Constitution and expose them in detail. And I hope we can do that.
Okay. Recently, my wife and I watched a show on Netflix called The Octopus Murders, where an investigative journalist proved that the U.S. government stole a computer technology from a private business. They put them into bankruptcy and then use that technology to spy on other countries. I've been reading how the CIA and the intelligence funded Google and now use it like a shadow government to spy and infiltrate and control the American public. Is there any truth to that?
It's absolutely true. Matter of fact, I have a whole chapter on that in the book, Twilight of the Shadow Government. I have a whole chapter on Google's connection to the CIA, as well as Google platforms and the CIA's manipulation of them, like Facebook and even Uber and others. That is how deep the CIA has penetrated our country in Silicon Valley and social media. And I have a whole chapter on that also.
Okay, interesting. One person that I find very interesting, because he was the one that pointed out this idea of corporate capture, how these government agencies regulate themselves, but then it's like a revolving door of CEOs coming into government, then going back to companies. As I watched the rollout of the COVID shots, and now we're finding out the truth on how dangerous they were, AstraZeneca and different ones. I'm reading about how the government allows forever chemicals in our food and water. I'm reading about how half of all sperm has chemical weed killer in it.
Right.
Is the government trying to dumb down the population, or at least lower the population so that they can have greater control over them?
Well, they already have extensive control over all of us. I think that's just the corruption of these giant pharmaceutical companies like Bayer and others, which in some sectors are connected to the CIA. But the CIA basically controls what we hear and what we see, and it's probably the most modern, greatest form of mind control the CIA has ever done. I get into this in this book and how they do that through social media and Google. I had a website up that was getting 500 hits a day after I published From the Company of Shadows, and I switched to a new website. We spent thousands of dollars on it and security. It went through Google, and all of a sudden we were getting 0 hits a day, and no one could find it. There's an example of how Google is still connected to the CIA. And you have to remember how the CIA does it is when they go in, they never give anything away without expecting something in return. So the CIA provided seed money for the creation of Google and analysts for the bringing up of Google. And I am sure that many of those, maybe Brin and others, have signed a secret CIA secrecy agreement. Once you do that, you're bound for life with a threat of prison. So yes, Google was created with the help, funding, and analysts of the CIA from the very beginning, and it is still connected to the CIA. And we can see the censorship that's going on through that platform. It is a platform not to be trusted.
Interesting. Okay, because we're on one of Google's platforms. So
Yeah. I mean, you'll find. I'm sorry to interrupt you there, Stephen. You will find in this book and my interviews, the only way around or to expose the CIA is flat out full bore in public, because they've got control of everything, including Google and this channel. Maybe that's why we had internet problems earlier.
Yeah.
Welcome to my world. So since they have control over everything, including some of these so-called encrypted websites, the NSA's gotten into those too. So there is no privacy left. My philosophy for the love of freedom has always been I go full bore open and take whatever personal risk there is, because that is the only way to defeat them. The last chapter of the book Twilight is called Avalanche, and that is calling for an avalanche from the American people to rise up in mass against CIA corruption and demand that their elected officials change their tune, break their connection to the CIA, and start reforming the CIA properly. And I've got 12 steps in the book that recommend how to do that.
Could this be why members of Congress all of a sudden are so interested in banning TikTok? Is they can control Google, but they can't control TikTok?
Well, TikTok is from Chinese origin, and they're the greatest espionage enemy that we have. When I was in counterintelligence, they were at the top of the list, and they still are. So TikTok is Chinese owned, and I think that's probably true. But do you think that the CIA would like to maintain its control over Google and others by getting rid of TikTok? You better believe it. The CIA is all about control, and it's all about the control of the thoughts and opinions of the American people.
Okay. I know the president of Iran was just announced dead from a helicopter crash. They're saying it was weather related, but the intelligence services were like immediately putting out press releases. This wasn't us. We didn't do it, even though you guys are, just launched $1 billion worth of rockets between you and Israel. Do we take that at face value, or just wait for the truth to come out, or does the truth never come out? It's just whatever they want us to see as truth.
Truth never comes out unless there's a courageous, I don't like the term whistleblower. I prefer to call them heroes. When a hero comes out and exposes illegal or corrupt activity, I'm not saying that chopper going down was a bad thing necessarily, but I am just, and this is just my opinion, I'm sure not U.S. intelligence, but intelligence was involved.
Okay. All right. Well, it'd be interesting. That just, happened less than 24 hours ago. So, okay.
Yeah.
I had a former CIA operative on, younger guy, still kind of believes in the CIA. I don't know, maybe he gets a pension from them still. But when I asked if the CIA had infiltrated the mainstream media news shows, he laughed and said, "Not to my knowledge. Is there any truth to Project Mockingbird? Is the CIA controlling us by controlling the stories that we're allowed to hear about or see through the media?"
I think your friend needs to get some knowledge. Mockingbird is alive and well. I call it Mockingbird 2.0. It has gotten worse. There's a long chapter in this book about Operation Mockingbird today in modern America, with the Washington Post, the New York Times, control of Facebook, control of Google. The stories that go out many times are disseminated by the CIA directly to their Mockingbird news outlets like the New York Times and the Washington Post. Washington Post being at the top of that list. That is still going on. And the CIA has gotten even more powerful than Mockingbird in that now they are infiltrating and controlling social media and what people see and hear on social media, which is mass mind control. And that is exactly what they're doing. Mockingbird is not just still alive. That name has been concealed now for decades. That's why I call it Mockingbird 2.0. It is not just still alive, it is pervasive, more pervasive than it has been in the last several decades.
Yeah, the first time I got a taste of, well, okay, so let me back up. I've been doing this journalism thing for about 3 years now, and as I'm covering the elections and different things, I start seeing, wait a minute, all these influencers that are giving these native organic testimonials of the amazingness of Joe Biden, it then turns out they're on payroll and that they're being paid to say these things, right? Same thing.
Yeah.
When they're rolling out all the draconian measures of COVID, you've got all these people in Hollywood and influencers saying, you got to do this, you got to comply, you need to do this. And then it turns out they're all being paid. And then I have a media agency approach me, and they offered me $30,000 to push the Schmeiser vaccine. And I told them no. And they were like, we don't even care if you've taken it. You just have such great influence over Americans. We'll pay you to do this. And I was like, no. And so it was the first time I realized, wait a minute, a lot of what's being pushed on us is deceptively being paid for, not organically rolling out like an honest review online or something like that. Is this part of it? Like, I keep thinking, we look at North Korea and go, okay, you guys have, only a couple of websites you can check. The president has to approve your haircut. Everyone has to dress in military garb to look like the military strong. Like, are we the fish that don't realize we're in water because we've been fed bull crap for so long?
Very good explanation there, I think. Yes, your average American has no idea how they've been deceived, deluded by virtually every facet of our news media. There's no question about that. That's why I hit that so hard. One of the top figures is Bob Woodward, who said he got in and met with William Casey on his deathbed. I was there. I was an agent. Never happened. He lied about that. I've got a whole chapter about Woodward's connection to U.S. intelligence, specifically the CIA, going back decades. There's a classic example. They've set him up as a hero with Watergate, and I have a chapter on that too. What was being put out is completely false regarding the real facts, and Woodward was involved as an intelligence officer in that, not a journalist, or both. He was also close friends with William Casey, and we saw him visit Casey routinely on the seventh floor of the CIA, and we all wondered, what the heck has this guy got with the director? So the reason I put this book out, Stephen, is the CIA's control is so pervasive over our news media and social media and everything else. And to your point, the entire COVID vax lockdown propaganda method and procedure was developed by the CIA at Johns Hopkins University. That's who did it, and we document that. And I would recommend people read Robert Kennedy Jr.'s book, The Real Anthony Fauci. He's got some great citations in there and some great discussion about the vaccine, which I think people really should read. But that entire propaganda effort, the lockdowns and everything else, was developed by the CIA at Johns Hopkins University before COVID hit.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Joe Rogan just told everybody they need to read that if they really want to understand Fauci.
Good.
I just started reading the Wuhan cover-up, RFK Jr.'s new book, so I don't have any review for it just yet, but I will. Speaking of books, you wrote a book, From the Company of Shadows, and you've got a new book that's going to be coming out soon, Twilight of the Shadow Government: How Transparency Will Kill the Deep State. Tell us about that book, why you wrote it, and what we're going to learn by reading it.
Thank you, Stephen. As a matter of fact, the book goes to the CIA pre-publication review board today, and then let the games begin. Because essentially I'm submitting, the hen house is submitting the manuscript to the Fox for review. And the CIA is, and I have a chapter on this in the book, the CIA has abused that process to cover up illegal activity for decades. PRB is good people. My dad was on the PRB. But they have to circulate this over to the dark side, the director of operations, where they take a whack at anything they don't want Americans to know. So that's going to the CIA PRB today, and I'm announcing that publicly, and then we'll keep an eye on what they do with it. No book, and I say this humbly, no book has ever been written like this one, especially by a CIA officer from the inside. Obviously, I'm taking a risk in doing this, but frankly, that doesn't bother me because it is just so important what the CIA has become and what it is doing. It is going to be a blockbuster. I think we can be sure the CIA is going to try to block some of the things I put in there because it's proving and recommending that the director of operations needs to be taken away from the CIA. Covert operations needs to be taken away from the CIA, placed somewhere else, perhaps in the Pentagon or something. And this juggernaut CIA, which has participated in murder, drug running, I think we all know, what they've done. I go into detail some of the things that they have done regarding drug running, and I think they've been responsible for the death of up to somewhere around 7 million people. It's probably one of the most evil organizations on the operational side that's ever existed, without question, in the United States government. I go into all of this. This has never been done before. I think it's very, very well written, and we'll talk about that later. But it's going to be quite shocking, and let the games begin today, because we'll see how the CIA tries to block a book that exposes what it's been doing.
Wow, wow, wow. Okay. I can't wait for the book to come out and people to get that. Thank you, Kevin, for coming on and helping me understand, helping my audience understand, like, we are up against a lot. Most of it we don't even know is happening. Like you say, this like shadow government is really pulling the strings, pulling us towards war, pulling us towards whatever agenda that they have, and it's scary. But I appreciate you having the courage to do this. I'm going to put a link directly to your books down below. But if people want to follow you, what's the best place for them to do that?
I'm on at Twitter at Kevin_Shipp. Now it's, I guess, X at Kevin_Shipp. And I put out tweets about the CIA and this particular subject pretty regularly there. They can follow me there. And that's probably the best place, because I usually post on that daily, depending on what the CIA is up to and what's going on within the United States specifically. So that's probably the best way to catch me, is on that.
Okay, I will put that down below. Thank you so much for coming on. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Stephen. Thanks for having me. Look forward to doing it again.